So anyway, that's just kind of an overview of what a plat is. And so yeah, so in this case, so we talked last time, and I think there was a couple of concerns that the Parks Board had identified regarding the kind of the initial proposal. One of them had to do with the extent of frontage on the highway of the proposed park dedication, and also the width of it kind of on the south end. And so what I'd like to do is just, I don't know if Sarah sent you our kind of latest plan, but what I'd like to do is just share that screen with you so you can see kind of what the latest. I don't know if are you able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm kind of moving my hand around on the screen there.
Yes.
So this proposal is kind of what we're going to go with at this point. And what we've done, so it's essentially the same. The other one, as I mentioned, it kind of went up here and then it jogged over. So there's all this area here that was kind of being proposed as park, but it really created a lot of frontage along the highway. What we did is, since the original plan was based on, originally we were thinking that this lot here would be also zoned high density, but because of some kind of technical aspects of the comprehensive plan, that isn't an option. And so we're keeping it in the C3 zoning. As a result, the park's calculation based on what the density of number of lots would be on these areas essentially is the same size of what we're proposing. Actually, we're proposing 0.2 of an acre more than at the required by the code at this point. So this park, I don't know if it works. So what, can you see it? If I zoom in, does that increase in size for you all?
Yes.
Okay. So you can kind of see, as I kind of zoomed in a little bit, it's about 1.43 acres. The park that's already been dedicated on the other side is 1.4 acres, and that was part of the Deer Point 2 subdivision back in 2007. So as you see, the area that we had originally along the highway was about, I think I measured at 365 feet. And now it's reduced by about 200 feet down to 160 feet. On the south side, we did increase this a little bit, and we increased it as much as seemed to be practical based on the configuration of this, kind of nub here. If you try to go too far to the east, then it starts getting kind of odd because you're kind of almost going to be skimming the edge of that. So it's increased right here about 6 feet. As you see, it is, 13 or 14 feet wider than currently, and it's a little bit bigger than the current park. So yeah, at this point, we wanted to just share that with you, kind of let you know that we did kind of consider the comments that we heard, and I guess, request your support for this configuration as the Parks Board. We did mention at the last meeting that, we would consider, the developer would consider, making improvements in exchange for park SDC credits if the city would like that to happen. I mean, I kind of looked at it as kind of a win-win, one way to get these park improvements done, and the developer would get credit for doing that. So it's, that's a benefit to them as well. And the way that works is, as homes are built, they'd be required to pay a park system development charge, and whatever dollars are spent into making improvements, that would just offset what they would pay that would go into the parks anyway. So yeah, I mean, I think those were the main points. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Alex. And
Not much, really. You know, we just all along, this has kind of been, as long as I've been on the project anyway, which is probably about 16 years in and out of the different owners, is it was always kind of envisioned that the city wanted to have this other side flip over and kind of be the other half of the proposed park that they started in Deer Point. So that angles and stuff were all kind of terrible that we were working with in the old plat, and we all want to get away from too much frontage on the freeway there. So I think we're wider than we anticipated being with this now in like the before plat that actually Lennar had done. I think it was a little smaller. Anyway,
Yeah, it was.
it took some thought process to get this back to this stage here. So I think, you know, we've kind of got it where it is, Tracy, and we really need to get the everyone here to, you know, cue in, but we tried to kind of take the comment of the freeway and the weird angle of the park up there, and there's only so much you can really do here with what we have to work with.
So then I guess I would, you know, with that, there would be about, you know, 2.8, a little over that, 2.8 acre park, pretty nice sized park. That would be probably in the mid to larger sized parks in the city. So, you know, with this, I think I don't really see this configuration, you know, assuming the project goes forward, this configuration changing. You know, there was a little uncertainty last time about what the size of the park would be, because we wanted to base it based on the number of units, and we didn't know that number exactly. But we're comfortable going with this. You know, if the number of units for whatever reason came out greater than this, you know, it required a larger size, the developer would just pay the difference. So yeah, I don't know. I'd be glad to entertain any questions you might have.
Anybody have any questions of the representatives?
Is the private utility easement that's diagonal across there just an underground thing
Yeah.
that doesn't show at all?
No, it would be underground, and it's really needed because this site is lower than, I don't know, are you still seeing my screen?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Where the utilities would be in the street. And so the only way to get to that would be to connect to the public sewer over in this area.
But what, if
Which is-
any, effect does it have on anything on top of it, on the ground?
It wouldn't have any effect.
Okay, it's just buried in there. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah,
buried.
I believe we would probably be precluded from being able to put any long-term permanent development there. So if we were to
Right.
build a basketball pad, for instance, we would want to do it off to the side of it, not right on top of it.
All right.
Probably a good idea.
And that's what would be good about, you know, us working with the city or the parks board to actually develop the implements that we decide to go in the park, because everybody can kind of look at that to get the best, latest, and greatest things that need to go into the park. But that drainage is actually the main drainage for everything coming down, and it's there now. You can see it actually working, and as it goes into Deer Point, which basically it's all the water that comes off the road. But yeah, it's just basically for storm runoff there. That's not sewer, Tracy.
Okay.
Right. It's just surface storm runoff. And I don't know that we can't build a hoop court on it. We may be able to if it's not a big weight impact, though. I'm not sure that we can't build on that, but I think it's a good thought that we probably maybe can't.
Okay.
And then
Anybody
all
else have-
the little blue dots over on the purple area are just bushes or trees, right?
Over in here?
Not water. Yeah.
No, these are all existing trees
Right.
that would be, so that I'll zoom in again if I can. So there's also some on the
Yeah.
park, and those will just all be retained. the site, with the, development. I guess that's the proposal. It would kind of depend on what the park's master plan is,
Mhm.
if it makes sense to retain all these trees or not. So that'd be something, I think, that could be sorted out through the master plan process with the consultant that the city's hired to do that.
Hopefully we can save the trees.
Any other questions?
I have questions. So I'm trying to remember about, I want to think off the top of my head, and I was trying to look it up. Like 100 homes gets you like 100 regular homes get you about 1.3 acres of parkland. And those are the SFR homes. And this is just slightly more than that. What you're proposing is like 1.4 homes, right? Or 1.4 acres, is that right?
1.43 acres, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of almost just like the equivalent of like 100 and, maybe a 5 or 10 of single family homes. And
Yeah, actually, I just did the calculation. And so 100 of single family is 1.29.
29. Yep. 1.29. So yeah, a bit over 100 homes. And yet what we're seeing, and I get that that's assuming an SFR, single family residential house, has 3 persons per unit. The multifamily dwelling is 2. And a condo multifamily is 1.5. So I get that that's, different math. But what I was just curious, about is that the, proposal here for how many units you're planning to have under the existing zoning, you'd be somewhere between like 83 and 148 units with the its existing zone for. And with the proposed zoning, it's up to like 114 to 224 units. So
well, that's not correct, because that was the original plan based on the C3, this whole area being high density. So we're looking at the maximum at this point is 163.
Can you say that again, Tracy? I didn't.
Yeah. So yeah, I think the numbers that you're referring to were based on this, where my hand is here, that's now going to be C3 would have been rezoned to high density. So that was based on the original proposal. We're revising it to retain, actually we're increasing the amount of C3. So with the revised math, the maximum based on, these 4 lots and these 2 lots is 163.
163. And so
Right.
You're assuming with that presentation that you don't have any residential planned on any C3, which is,
I don't know what's going to happen exactly. Yeah.
well, that's kind of my point. And this, it kind of is a parks issue, and it's it's a bigger than that kind of issue of, when you're asking for such a big zone change, but you don't have any, plans as to what's going to be on this big purple blob. It's a little hard to kind of say, you could have a whole nother, at least 100 units on that blob, and that changes the math for what the parkland dedication would be.
And then the fee in lieu of would kick in.
Correct. But if we're, wanting to have, more parkland for 100 more units, that's kind of the, the reason you have so many, acres per unit is to deal with how many people you have around there. And when you put, twice as many units, right next to the park than you had planned, probably need a slightly bigger park. And so, that's, I guess, my concern of, you wanting us to kind of bless this based on, just big blobs of purple and not having any specific knowledge of what's being proposed there regarding any kind of residential development. It's a little bit, it's like not enough information to totally, bless it, I guess.
I totally understand where you're coming from, Kathleen. And let me tell you, I mean, we looked at this thing with all the stuff we need to get, a couple hundred units in the project so it can pencil to put the road through. Well, we've been spending a lot of time with Ray at All County lately, and he's just basically wiped off about 3 buildings on the other side of the plat because of the grade. So, I mean, we're losing units so fast on the other side. I doubt that we're going to end up where we're even out of need, we've got so many units we're going to need the park. But I do understand what you're saying, but there's not very many things going to happen on this piece. It's not that big, and it's got a commercial component. It's this village overlay is so difficult, and we just found out in the village overlay that parks and open space are not a permitted use. So we're going to we're working with Kelly to figure out how we somehow get the park be a permitted use. I mean, if you can believe that. We thought we had everything figured out. We kind of had parks working with us. We're kind of getting the shape going. And then we found out we're going to have to rezone or get a variance on what happens.
It's a comp plan amendment to allow parks, because parks aren't identified as a zoning in the village, which is kind of crazy.
The village overlay has killed this property since day one. That's why it can't be developed.
Yeah, I mean, that could be changed pretty quickly, I would think, to change the code while you're still, thinking around, figuring out what the layout is. And
well, the layout's figured out. This is the layout, and it will be submitted next week probably as a revised, and we'll go through the process. So yeah, this is the layout at this point.
so you're going to go forward with this whole thing and just have a big purple blob and tell everybody that you don't know what it's going to be yet. Is that the plan?
Yeah, and the only thing it will be is what's allowed in the C3 zone.
And what exactly is allowed in a C3 zone?
It's a variety of commercial, primarily commercial, smaller commercial uses. There is
So like shops and stores and
services. Could be
no residential?
No, there is up to a certain percentage. I think 20% could be residential.
Well, it says single family dwelling or 2 multifamily dwelling above, beside or behind commercial businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have multifamily dwelling above, beside, or behind the commercial business.
So it's a mixed use kind of area.
Well, yeah, I assume it's commercial on the bottom, but well, I mean, it's not necessarily on the bottom because the multifamily dwelling can be above or, well, above obviously, but beside or behind means a lot of that could
very well be housing.
Right, that's my point.
Let me tell you how difficult this village overlay zone is. We've spent $117,000 to date for when we bought it 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago, just trying to figure the map out. And it's so frustrating because we try to, trying to please every portion of the property. And I mean, we've gotten so many curveballs in the last year, just trying to get a map that we can actually submit. So it's been terribly frustrating. And we wanted to remove the commercial component because it doesn't work out there. And then the goal nine with the city, even though there's vacant land all over the city of Sandy, when you drive through it, we weren't going to meet the goal 9 standard for the city of them keeping, a certain amount of commercial because they just took some out on another development that was done. So it's been one frustration after another trying to just to get to something we can submit. And it's all about getting this expensive connection to 26, one dealing with ODOT and one dealing with the DeBarco, building of DeBarco with the low grade of the site. And that's actually what's going to take away from the buildability of more of the property, because to put buildings in the other side, the retaining walls to be built by code that would be required you wouldn't be able to, it wouldn't cost out. So I'm kind of rambling, but it's been pretty frustrating. But I mean, I don't think the park, even if we did get a bunch of units and we had to upsize the park a little bit instead of paying fee of lieu, but I think the park will work pretty good as we have it pictured here, and then understanding what implements go in there for the surrounding area. We don't know, Kathleen, either what's going in there, because we've had this laid out about 8 times, and that's what's driven the cost up. But the engineer is, every time we get somewhere, we get a map, then for some reason it doesn't work. And that, I mean, that's developing. That's the risk you take. But now we're trying to actually think, what can we put, how can we make something work in there that's going to pencil, be good with the park, good with the city, good with the zoning, and support the other side of apartments. So, it'd probably be some assisting thing for the neighborhood and the new development that comes in.
Well, I just, again, I think, what you're kind of, it's like the devil you know and the devil you don't. And you're asking for a zone change that, a big zone change. I understand why you're asking for it and all, but and that's fine. But when you kind of bring it forward and want everybody's support to do that with, the devil you don't know, it's hard for people to get on board to support that. And like I said, when you're, looking at possibly having a lot of residential on that purple blob and not knowing how much it is, it's hard for me to kind of, support that. I would rather just, you tell me, show me exactly, not exactly, but fairly, fairly specifically how many residences you're planning on that purple blob, so that we can, understand, what that means for the park need.
Well, I totally get it, Kathleen. And now we have, once we change the park back, I thought, well, let's do more park and leave this big corner up by the freeway and size the park up, and that really hurt us. So everything we laid out on that map doesn't work anymore, because now we're back to the park being like this. So now we've got to try to figure out, okay, what kind of components can you put in there to make it work? There's only a few. The stores associated with residential, and I mean, it's really expensive to do that. So
right, I suspect you do have a fairly good idea of what's going to go in on the purple, and
I haven't heard that. I mean,
yeah.
we've been, as far as I know, the developer is interested in looking at a hotel of some sort. But it's
that's
really, I don't
pencil.
know. I don't think they know. It's kind of a marketing thing of, what at this point, the improvements to put into Barco and the permitting and the frontage improvements are, astronomical, basically. And so the uses will be kind of dependent on, can those improvements be done? And then can they, is somebody interested in purchasing it or developing it based on what it's going to cost after all the improvements are settled out? So there is a bit of uncertainty. I mean, I feel like this is a kind of a step forward in developing the property. I mean, the alternative is it sits there forever. There is no park here, whatever. It's a, blackberried field. This, this plan is I think a step in having something happen without knowing exactly what will happen on this property, because it is based on these improvements, this highway frontage, and just what the cost of all that's going to be. So that will kind of dictate a little bit what happens on it. So I don't
Kathleen,
know, we can't give you more certainty than that.
give us
Anybody
your,
else have
give us-
any?
what are your thoughts on that, guys, as far as, having a motel there? Where would you put it? Because this is where we're at. We're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do now that we can't get the commercial component out because it's going to be too expensive and we're going to have to buy property and replace it. It'll take forever. So it just wasn't feasible. So, the hotel is in the zone. The city only has one, but it's not our first choice for sure. We would have rather done kind of some sort of mixed unit with the apartment, got rid of the commercial zone, but still probably done something in there. But anyway, what Kathleen, how does that grab you? I mean, if you had a hotel there.
Yeah, it's highway frontage. I mean, that's a possibility. My understanding for the single family residential, don't you have to show a street layout of the residential stuff? I realize that when it's one big apartment building, you don't have to show all all that. But when you've got SFR or multifamily,
Well, this is the street.
what's that? Right, but if you have SFR on there, I assume, you're going to have streets for the.
Well, there won't be any SFR. It's, that's not a permitted zone in the village.
Yeah, in the village commercial, it says single family dwelling.
Single family dwelling, okay, SFR is single family residential. I thought you were talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry, single family
residential
dwelling.
zone.
Right,
Okay.
but if you have a single family dwelling, you kind of need, a street to go down and a driveway to pull into.
No, there won't
all
be
that.
any single family dwellings in there.
So it'll be multi-family dwelling.
Either multifamily or commercial. Single family isn't permitted in the village
Right.
commercial.
Single family residential, but single family
Yeah.
dwelling is.
I don't think so.
Well, I'm reading I copied and pasted it.
I'll have to
Single
look at
family
that.
dwelling or multifamily dwelling above, beside, or behind commercial businesses.
Well, when you try to do that and mix them together, it's really impossible to build it.
Okay, let's back up for just a minute here, okay? I got a question or two I'd like to ask also. You mentioned that you were going to be submitting next week. I take it that will trigger a pre-application process?
No, that will, the pre-application has already been done and we've already submitted the application. We're now kind of revising it and it will be renoticed as a kind of a revised application. But no, it's already kind of started the process, went through the pre-app. Actually, they had 3 pre-application conferences with the city. And then the application was submitted last December. And we were scheduled to go to the hearing in July. And after we kind of looked at it a little bit more, realized that his original plan did not have any of the commercial zoning, and realizing that was going to be a problem with the Goal 9 compliance. So that's where the revised plan came into play. And, this is the revision.
From my perspective, I guess my feelings on it right now is the concept, the idea, the basic idea, I think is a lot of merit to it. I think that there's an opportunity to work together to do the development of the park. I think that's all good. I think that we'd have to have a development agreement that specifies everything before we can really agree to that, however. And in that, I think it needs to have a more definitive answer on how many residential units are actually going to be, what the fee and lieu would total to, what the SDCs would total to, and what the total park acreage donation would be. Until we get hard numbers on that, it's pretty hard for us to say, yes, definitively, we are 100% endorsing this project. I think the best we could do at this point, and I would look to my partners on this, is to say something along the lines of, while we agree with the concept, we're not quite ready to move into a development agreement yet until we have better definition of what all is going to be included within the development and what the actual requirements will be. That's how I feel.
Don, that sounds killer. I and we don't, it's like, we're not trying to hide anything or trying to pull more units or this or that because we want to add or take away from the park.
No, I realize that.
Part of this park probably 100 times in the last 10 years, just looking at it, thinking about it. But I understand, and maybe we'll try to, I think we'll try to we're obviously moving forward to try to figure out how we make that piece work. So
Sure. I understand that. I'm not quite sure what your definition of killer is in this, if it's a killer of the deal or a killer good deal. Not quite sure.
No, I'm glad that everybody's kind of positive and we're all on the same page here, but we got a little more tweaking to do. And I understand the concerns of the park board too, not knowing what's going in there. And we have the same concern because we still don't know what actually is going to fit in there. Because again, we've moved the plat again. So once we do that, anything you had planned, the buildings move. And we really don't know whether a hotel is going to be better for the project because it'll pay for the road, or do we do a mixed use with residential, which is very difficult in the village plan, side and the back. And
okay.
killer is good, not killer isn't bad.
Okay. Kathleen, I'm going to come back to you in just a minute, but first I want to hear from Susan, Makoto, and Sam if they have any, and Michael if they have any.
Yeah, I don't have anything to say.
Susan.
Okay.
Susan, do you got anything you'd like to add, say, question?
She there? Oh, she must be mute. No, she's not. Mute.
Susan, can you hear us? Susan?
Okay, how about Makoto? Do you got anything, Makoto?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you and Kathleen, and the fact that I don't want to. I guess I don't want to do things out of order.
Yeah.
We've seen big problems with that, and that's my only concern. I would like to see things more solidly put, like not as many question marks before I want to lend my support for something. I understand that it's complicated and convoluted and a whole bunch of things with the technicalities involved. That's all.
Okay. Michael, do you have anything?
Well, I think this park configuration is an improvement over the other ones, so that's positive. Otherwise, I kind of agree with everybody that we need some hard numbers before we can give a hard, good deal.
And Sam, what do you have for us?
Two questions. First, on development that the in the park that the contractor would may be doing, could that development cover both the Bull Run area and the Deer, whatever it was, Deer Point section?
I think that'd be the intent, Sam.
Yeah, it'd be based on the development agreement that the developer would have with this city council, but certainly it could, include that. I mean, that would be the thought.
Okay, I'm new on all this stuff, so that just made sense to me. Then I guess on the commercial, is there any way to put a parameter on it? If it's over X numbers of residential, then more park space would be considered, or something along those lines that might appease people?
I don't know if you're asking us as the developers. So there's kind of two steps here in terms of the process. The first step we're applying for is this subdivision, and there's the zone change and so on. Once that's completed, then there would be a design review on each of these, well, at least the high density residential and the commercial piece. So I'm kind of thinking down the road. So say the design review of this commercial piece included some residential. I mean, it's definitely theoretically possible based on, so what we would do is look at the calculation again and say, okay, based on the calculation, the size of this park is basically sized to calculate 158 multifamily and 4, or 159 and 4 single family dwellings. And if that number increased for whatever reason, it's certainly appropriate to consider maybe the dedication of additional parkland at that time. So at this point, since we don't know what the size is, that would certainly be an appropriate thing to consider. And that would be kind of worked out as part of the design review application for this particular site.
Tracy, a question for you, for me. I mean, if we say we hit the threshold of miracle units that I'm very doubtful we will after meeting with Ray several times, how much park can be added to what we have now? Are we talking a half acre or 20,000 feet?
I'm not sure how many units or what the magic number is.
That we could be missing. I mean, are we talking about the line moving another 5 feet down the whole, I'm wondering how much park is it possible that we could have to add or buy or, put in if we did hit the threshold of units they're talking about?
What threshold are you talking about?
How much square footage, Tracy, in the worst case would we have to make the park if we got all the units in? They want to know this unit count, and I understand that. I mean, how much bigger would the park requirement be if we just were able to put all the units in and it was a flat piece of dirt, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I just did a quick calculation of 10 units, 10 multifamily units, and how much parkland does that generate? And it's basically 0.086 acres. So for every 10 multifamily units, it's about 8/100ths of an acre. Let me just do that again to make sure I'm correct. Times 2. Yeah. So you can just
Tracy,
kind of, sure,
can I
go
just
ahead.
ask, is it a congregate multifamily or standard multifamily that you're using?
It'd be standard.
Okay.
So it's times 2.
Yep.
So it's basically, just for everyone's knowledge, it's the calculation is number of units. So I took 10 units, and for multifamily, you use 2 persons per unit. For single family, you use 3 persons. And then this magic number of 0.0043, and that's the basically area of parkland identified per 1,000 people. And so you do that calculation, and so it comes up with 0.086. The code says you round to the nearest 100th. So if it were just this number, it'd be rounded to 0.09 acres. So you can kind of scale it that way, I guess. So then, if I take that number, 0.086 times what is the size of an acre, it's about 3,746 square feet per every 10 people, 10 units, I mean, not people, 10 units. So that kind of gives you an idea. So if you had 20 units, it's, 7,000 square feet, and 30 units, so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, Alex. I mean, that's the way, theoretically, if there are units put on the C3, and it based on the overall calculation for the development, the calculation resulted in either a fee in lieu of or additional land, that's kind of gives you an idea of, you know, how the size of the park would be based on scalable 10 unit, you know, increments or something like that.
And just to point out something to the parks, not that it's too relevant, but it was approved, I believe, to be the same size in the Lennar approvals that it is here, and probably they had less doors, and that's probably why. But we can.
No, it was quite a bit smaller, actually. The original approval was it was just a little over an acre, because they only had around, I think, 88 units or something like that. It's quite a bit smaller.
Mm-hmm. It's a tough one, I'll tell you.
So anyway, I mean, I don't know if there's any other questions. I don't want to, I mean, I think Sarah said she wanted about 10 minutes for this agenda item. We've obviously gone over that, so I don't want to take up all your time, but, you know, I'd be glad to answer any questions. And
I want to circle back and give Susan another try, see if she's.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Susan, did you have any questions?
Well, I missed out on a chunk of whatever going back and forth, but no, I can't think of anything. Just glad to be here.
Hey, Kathleen, did you have anything else?
Just kind of verification that the 159 multifamily units, that's all the stuff on the brown color, the R3, is that right?
yeah, yep.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's just based on, if you take these acreages and multiply them by 20 units per acre, that's what that's based on.
Okay.
You know, whether we can get 20 units per acre is the question because of topographic consideration. So it will never be more than that, but it could very well be less. And so we're kind of proposing the park based on that number of what the maximum is. But you know, and so we're not saying that, you know, if this units turns out to be 20 units less, we're going to take away park. We're saying that we're willing to give up this amount of park based on what theoretical maximum is. But we don't know exactly what's going to happen on the C3. So, but it could be less based on these two lots here.
Well, I don't know if we've helped you or hurt you today. I think the only, you know, like I said earlier, what we can say is the concept, I think, is agreeable to us, but until we get all the final calculations and numbers, we can't give you that 100% endorsement quite yet.
That's fine. I mean, those will be kind of sorted out at a later date. So yeah, I just wanted to share this with you all to let you know that, you know, we did listen in terms of the configuration of the park. We're still willing, you know, it's a, I guess it would be a partnership between the city and the developer to do improvements. It seems like a win-win, but you know, if the city decides to hire their own contractor, that's fine too. But it just, and the timing, my impression is the timing is pretty good with the ongoing parks plan. And, you know, I felt like with this configuration, it would give the developer or the contractor a pretty good idea of where the plan was. So now that plan can be developed. You know, I didn't want to have this uncertainty of this floating line, so to speak, because I think it's important that that park, you know, that those people have been waiting for, you know, many, many years, hopefully gets built sooner than later.
Yeah, well, I agree. And I think that the concept of working together to build it, I think the idea of mobilizing equipment for both projects at the same time makes a lot of sense. It saves everybody money. It certainly would save the city a bucket of money. Just a matter of being able to make sure that we get all of our ducks in a row.
Right, understood.
Before we jump into bed together on that one.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like Sam's idea.
Yeah.
What was that idea?
What was Sam's idea?
He just talked, well, I'll let him say it. I'm not going to mansplain it.
Feel free. So I believe what we're talking about was, let's say that there's there's X number of units. This is the park, but if you go, over that, if you develop more in the commercial, what's potentially the commercial right now, then it would be reevaluated with potentially more park area. Was that what we were talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
That
I think
seemed to give everybody a little flexibility, but yeah.
right. No, that would be appropriate. And that's what I was saying during the design review stage of that, for that lot. That would make sense. And it would take, that calculation would take into consideration probably the design review applications for these other two lots, which would kind of tell us, okay, instead of 158 or 159 lots, which is the theoretical maximum, we only got 150. And so the calculation is adjusted based on that. Yeah. So yeah, that sounds good. So yeah, I mean, so just let you know, we're gonna continue to move forward with this, and we, at some point, I'm sure this planning department will be kind of requesting your formal, written comments and all that kind of stuff. So appreciate the time.
See, I just have one last comment or confusion, I guess, and that is that if the underlying zone on the parkland is, I believe it's what is it, R1?
No, it's, what is it?
It is R1, yes.
Okay.
R1 or kind of
It's
weird.
R1, I have a map of it. So I don't understand why you would have to make a zone. What did you say you had to do that Kelly was making you do?
Yeah, so if you look at in the comp plan, it talks about the village. It talks
Right.
about the uses and zoning allowed in the village. And it doesn't list park and open space zoning in the village. So because of that, the park and open space zoning is a fairly recent addition to the zoning code. And I don't think it was, when that was added, not that long ago, I can't remember exactly when, but we didn't consider that tweak to the village plan designation. That doesn't really, it's silent on whether parks and open space is even allowed zoning in the village. So for that reason, we need to request a plan amendment to add it. We were considering, that part of it was a little bit, to the developer when they first heard it, was like, what? The city wants the park, we're willing to give the park, but now we have to do a plan amendment to force the park on them? That doesn't make any sense. But
I mean, yeah, I don't understand that because it was never part of the village. I mean, the underlying zone is
well, no, that is
R1.
part of the village. Yeah, so there's the comp plan. If you look at the comp plan, it includes that whole area.
Okay, all right.
The zoning designation, underlying zoning is R1 probably,
Okay.
but the village comp plan just
Okay.
it just shows this kind of a brown area over this whole area.
I appreciate
think
you
this-
explaining that. Yeah,
I think that's going to be
Yeah.
a
Good for us
question
to
and
know.
a discussion for another day.
right.
Yeah.
Good deal though. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for your time and appreciate it. And we'll talk to you later.
All right.
Yeah, we look
thank
forward
you.
to seeing you again. Thank
All
you.
right, take care. All right, see ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks,
bet.
Alex.
All right, see ya.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, moving along here. We had suggestions to add a couple of things. The first was a overlook update. Kathleen, what do you got for us?
Well, what I got for you, if you go down to the overlook, there's signs in.
I saw.
Woo-hoo.
Yeah, wahoo! Went out on my walk this morning and they were just finishing putting them in. So yeah, the only, of course, as Nancy said, Kathleen, nobody's going to notice except you. The new sign looks really nice, but the color of the sign frame is a different color brown because the existing signs, just went to a local sandblaster and got sandblasted and what do you call that, coated powder coated. And I thought I had the same color, you know, they had different colors of brown. And the new sign that we got that was done by Sea Reach is a darker brown. So I'm a little, it's totally, doesn't match at all. But we'll have to live with it. So anyway,
There we go.
yeah, and then the telescope is going to be put in. We relocated the telescope. Those should be coming there. It's already here, but they're just going to install it in the next few days, I imagine. And yep, good progress.
Thank you very much. I'll have to check that out. The next item that you talked about was the opening of parks, and I'm making an assumption here that what you're referring to was going from currently Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties are all linked together in the governor's plans for reopening. And we are set at phase 1 of the reopening. My guess is what you're referring to, Sandy City Council at some point said, screw the governor, let's just open everything up and be done with it. Kind of like saying, screw the governor, let's have a fireworks show, right? So my concern with that is that I would have a hard time endorsing that. My feeling is that, you know, it's kind of, you know, it's like when you have a little kid and you want them to eat nothing but junk food all day long and eat something healthy and take care of yourself. And then all of a sudden to just turn around and tell the kid, well, do whatever you want to, eat whatever you want to. I kind of see that as wrong. Phase 1 allows for parks to be open. What it doesn't allow for are certain amenities within parks to be open. So for instance, when we do move from phase 1 to phase 2, the playgrounds will be able to be officially opened up. Nobody is enforcing that nobody can use those playgrounds now. It's just, you know, signage out there saying you can't, and yet people still do. However, there are certain amenities that are within our control. One of them is, for instance, a splash pad. That would be a phase 2 opening. And, you know, that would require the city turning it on for people. I get that. I think that it would be grossly irresponsible for the city to take it upon itself to be the arbiters of what's best for our community in regards to skipping different phases of the governor's opening plan, because the reality is the coronavirus, COVID-19, does not know geographical limitations. It doesn't know where cities end or counties end or anything else like that. So I think that our best bet for the good of ourselves, for the good of our region, is that we continue on down the path of opening up as we're allowed to open up, and not try and give a big finger to the governor like they did with the fireworks and say, we'll just do it on our own. That's my personal feeling. That's also my feeling as a park and rec professional, that we need to respect the guidelines that are given to us, because if we don't, it will have adverse impacts on all of our surrounding communities. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in and say, yeah, so that is in alignment with where we are in terms of phases. And I just want you to know that, you know, we're working on being ready when phase 2 comes along. And so that we have a plan in place so that we can expand where appropriate at the right time. An example is restrooms. Right now, the restrooms are closed. So we're looking into how to get restrooms open in phase 2, but also meet the guidelines where they are meant to be cleaned and sanitized more frequently than we would normally do that, and looking at the expense, the staff time, what the realities are of that. But we're not just kind of sitting around waiting for phase 2. We're planning for all of that. We're looking into it so that we can respond and make things available to the community at the appropriate time.
Excellent.
I totally support what Don said. I think we as an advisory board should come down strongly on obeying the law and following what we're supposed to follow.
Pretty tough for us to enforce our own rules if we're not willing to live by the rules themselves.
I have seen both in Knollwood, and didn't we see in Bornstead yesterday, Susan, the playgrounds are being used. Not to the extent that they were previously, but people are using them. Originally, at Knollwood, there was a yellow ribbon around the playground, which kind of made it pretty clear that you weren't supposed to use it. That's not there anymore.
Yeah, so my understanding is some of that stuff is getting taken down by people, signs and other
Yeah.
things. I think that, I think we're experiencing that there are levels, great deal of emotion around these issues. The city, my best understanding is that we're taking an educational approach, trying to communicate what those guidelines are and what the expectation is. Enforcement is very difficult. Jordan likened it to kind of whack-a-mole. At some point, we have to hope that people will take on the personal responsibility to make the right decisions. And
You know, I don't know if you had the opportunity to be on the directors meeting yesterday, Sarah. I was on it, and just listening to our counterparts across the state, everybody is struggling with the enforcement of it, and it is literally impossible to enforce the playgrounds being closed unless you're out there physically building a fence around them, and some of them do have fences around them. But unless you have that fence around them, you're relying on the good common sense of the people themselves. And yeah, we were doing the same thing, Michael. In Oregon City, we'd go out and we'd put caution tape up and signs, and people would come along and tear it down. And at a certain point, you just got to throw up your hands and say, okay, we've told you that they're closed, and that's as good as it's going to get for the enforcement part of it. But that does not mean that we go out there and actively advertise that we're going away from enforcing our rules.
I wasn't suggesting that we begin to get very severe in our enforcement. I was just reporting what I've seen.
yeah.
Right. I know that.
People you'd want a ticket too, right? Like families, kids, mom, parents.
Yeah,
I
you
miss
didn't
that.
make sense.
Yeah, we'll keep educating. If you're at a park and you notice that there's no signage still there, let me know.
Okay.
If it looks like we're going to be in phase one, for more than a couple more weeks, we may need to replace some of those.
Yeah.
It's expensive. So if we're getting near to phase two, we might not do it. But if it looks like phase one is going to be extended, we might want to replace some of those signs. So if you're out and about and you notice there is no signage, let us know.
Well, I don't know if you saw it, Sarah, or not, but it was announced today, posted in the Oregonian, that we are not moving to phase two yet. That it appears that it's going to be at least 2 more weeks before they reconsider that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay.
The issue that kind of got raised at the city council meeting was the bathrooms, the porta potties. And part of me is, it's like, well, if we don't have the splash pad and you're not supposed to be at the playground, putting porta potties in there and cleaning them twice a day is kind of the wrong message to send. On the other hand, if the city council wants to insist on that, then you're basically having to, I think, clean them twice a day, which is quite a bit more than they would normally be cleaned. And so my concern would be, I don't mind if if we've saved a lot of money because we haven't had it out there. My point is I don't want to spend more money cleaning, porta potties twice a day and, ding the budget really bad because,
Sure.
You don't have to clean them twice a day if you sign them. You do have to clean them once a day, but you can sign them and say that they are not being cleaned twice a day.
That is correct.
And we have reached out to a variety of vendors to get an idea of what it would cost. And there are some that are providing once a day sanitation. They're not pumping them once a day, but they're sanitizing them and providing hand sanitizer and other supplies. And it is an expense, and we're looking at it right now. And, yes, we haven't had them out, so we have saved some money up until this point. So it may end up being somewhat flat in the end because we normally remove them after Labor Day. And so if in 2 weeks we go into phase 2 and we have about a month left, we'd probably spring for them, I imagine, and get something out there as things like the splash pad and the playground open. But if we stay in phase 1 through more of August, you know, I'm not sure what council will decide, but it's a good point, Kathleen. It does encourage.
What do we have them in? I mean, we have the mining bathrooms open usually. We have it at the splash pad, and we have it usually out at Sandy Bluff.
And the skate park, but
oh, okay.
but,
I never go there.
yeah, we might skip the skate park.
Anyway,
Okay.
anything else on this topic?
Well, the other thing that they did bring up was that, we should be having music in the park and movies in the park in a way that we could maybe socially distance and hold, you know, several movies at different places. And, you know, I'm like, well, you know, it all seems, you know, like, oh, that's great, except that then you need, you know, 5 movies and 5 projectors. And it didn't seem very realistic, a little more aspirational, but that's kind of what they were proposing, is somehow finding a way to continue with movies in the park and and the concerts in the park in a way with social distancing. They were
At this point,
they kind of gave out about the fact that with the fireworks show, there could have been a possibility of closing off the high school grounds and having people out there with their cars. Now,
yeah.
you know, I'm just the messenger here. I don't necessarily agree with all this stuff. I just, you know, this is kind of the points and things that they were raising. And I just thought, well, if we wanted to weigh in with our recommendation on that, we should.
Yeah, I know at this point with phase 1, the maximum gathering size is 25 people.
Mhm.
That'll go to 100 people when we go to phase 2. So I'm not sure what our normal attendance would be in a concert or a movie situation.
I think it's 250 in phase 2, isn't it, Don?
I'm looking at the,
Outdoor gathering.
if we can maintain physical distancing.
Yeah. And there are just, you know, it's just as a matter of information, there are some communities that are in phase 2 that have done some pretty creative things with regard to movies in the park, whether we would try to do something like that. You know, we are discussing the possibility of drive-in movies, something, just a couple at the end of the summer. So, but taking into consideration all of the safety guidelines, what we would need to do, you know, what it would take. But the company that we normally rent movies from is allowing us to cancel everything at the last minute. So we're having to lose a deposit or something like that. So we're trying to stay flexible and be ready to do something for the community if we can accomplish that in the right manner under the guidelines.
Actually, I want to go back to your question. For outdoor recreation phase 2, maximum outdoor is 100.
Okay. I'm jumping ahead apparently.
You're going all phase 3 on me.
Well,
okay.
I don't know that you have more than 100 people at those movies in the park and stuff, at least when we were helping run them. But yeah, it's just something to consider, and that's what they were wanting. But yeah, I don't think I'll be going, so.
Okay. All righty, anything else? Nothing for the good of the order? Then let's stand adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Great job, Don.
Thanks.
See you later.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.